Thank you so much for joining today. We're incredibly excited to be here with you to talk about the whole child along with social emotional learning. And so much to share with you, and we appreciate you all being on today's call. We will be recording today's call and sending out the resources to you after, and so you'll have access to all of those pieces. Today, we're going to be talking about faculty and staff mental well-being and really what are the effects of COVID-19 for teachers, and really thinking about how to create a culture for the well-being of your entire school, not just your students, but also your faculty, as we know that they are instrumental of making any school successful. Creating conditions for your own mental health. My puppy is providing some entertainment for us today, so hang on one moment. And then really being able to create conditions around mental health and driving those pieces. And so Laura, we're so excited to have you here today. Dr. Laura Mullins has been in this field for over 20 years and experience in transforming education, working within social justice framework, as well as fulfilling a variety of roles that include being a K through 12 public school teacher in both not only New York City, but Los Angeles, and a university researcher and lecturer, a teacher, educator, and professional development faculty. During her role in creating curriculum development at DMC at UCLA Preventative Center of Excellence, she also specializes in supporting teachers' well-being and resilience with a focus on mindfulness, and also as a foundation for the social emotional relationship of well-being. What I've learned so much from you and just the time that we spent together, but your background has been with a BA in sociology from UC Berkeley and a master's with social justice education from UCLA, and also a PhD in holistic education at NYU. Throughout your research, you have really been teaching through your experience of higher education and also developing a model of holistic and also integrative education with the dynamics about well-being at the true core of everything that you've taught. You're incredibly passionate about healing and the well-being through education, and is deeply passionate around the human spirit and the community and nourishment of potential personal and systematic foundation. We are so excited that you're here today and appreciate you spending time with our volunteers and teaching them all the things that you have learned and helping us in the current state that we're in and driving with partnerships in the American Heart Association. So thank you so much, and we're so excited that you're here today.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Paisley, for the wonderful introduction and for this opportunity to be here with you and with all that are listening to really support well-being for all in education. So I'm excited to get started. I thought that we would start with a very simple 1-minute mindfulness practice to center ourselves and transition into the learning space together. And so we're gonna play this video. It's 1 minute, and I'm just gonna invite you to see what you receive from the sounds, the images. See if you can kind of be mindful of the breath. Nothing needs to change. Just kind of breathe into this 1 minute and see how that might support you in centering yourself as we dive in. Wonderful. And I find it so interesting that as we're doing a well-being practice, something popped up that was a distraction. And I think that was so perfect because in some ways, our well-being can get interrupted, right, with stresses from life. And so we have to be so intentional about returning back to the breath, to have those moments of pause. And so that I wanted to start with this, very simple practice by way of just, planting a seed around an intentional transition into a learning space. And so all of us have come from many different places this morning, this afternoon, wherever we might be, and now we're here together. And so transitioning intentionally can be very helpful for students, for staff coming into a staff meeting. And so you might already be doing this in your role, but this is just a suggestion to consider the value of an intentional transition. Again, this was 1 minute, and we just used video to center ourselves to to be ready for our learning together. And so by way of kind of getting ourselves in this space, I would love to invite you in the chat, if you can think about something that you're grateful for today. So it could be something really small, like, coffee this morning, or, something big, like family and friends and health and things like that. So let's take 30 seconds. You can put as many things as you would like in the chat. This is another well-being practice that's also research-based, and so there's purpose to this. So let's see what we have from those that are with us. Christmas lights, yes, Bree. Oh my goodness, family, friends. Coffee, says Casey, my family, Ed, absolutely. So much to be grateful for, right? Healthy family, grandchildren, coffee, and York peppermint patties. Family and friends, my fur baby, says Marjorie. Grateful for my daughter who will be born tomorrow. Oh my goodness, Daniel, congratulations. Taking my daughter to her first gymnastics class tonight. Awesome, Stephanie. Coffee, my children, laughter, grateful for my community, healthy kids and our staff keeping us safe. A good morning from my kids. This is so beautiful. Hugs from my students. Wonderful morning walk with the dog. So much to be grateful for. Thank you so much for sharing that. Please feel free to keep sharing. It's inspiring to celebrate all the good in life. We can go into the next slide. And so I wanted to start with that before we dive into our content, because there's always, so much to be grateful for, and gratitude is a research-based practice. Starting with something like this before diving into content can be really helpful and supportive of well-being. So we're going to dive now into, the content of the presentation. So we know, I know, all of us that are in education know that the pandemic has taken a tremendous toll on our K-12 teachers, staff, principals, administrators, district personnel, everybody involved, parents, community members. So we know from studies that are done that teachers are more likely to report feeling stressed and burned out than any other local government or sector employee during the pandemic. So 84% of teachers surveyed on a national study said that teaching has been more stressful than it was before the pandemic. And all of us who've been teachers and who are teachers know that teaching is generally very, complex and stressful and highly demanding in regular life. Now out on this massive global event, and now just the pressure and the toll is significant. And so there is a call, an urgent call to prioritize teacher and staff well-being. And so in a joint report last summer, the American School Counselor Association and the National Association of School Psychologists have urged districts to provide psychological triage, not just for students, but also for staff, to address trauma and the intense stress caused by the pandemic. So when we're thinking about whole child, we want to be thinking about whole teacher and whole leader as well. And finally, there's a new guidebook from the U.S. Department of Education that's also urging school districts to step up emotional support for their staff members. even as they are focused intensely on supporting students who have been traumatized by the events of the last year and a half now. So teacher well-being, staff well-being, student well-being, it's all connected and all important, right? Essential. A couple of quick pieces from a nationwide poll on K-12 employees. There's a decline in job satisfaction. There's an increase in considering changing jobs because of the stress of the pandemic. Work hours have increased substantially in the wake of the pandemic, and then also just stress and burnout is over half of the employees report feeling burnt out or fatigued, right? And we're just at the beginning, middle of the year, and there's a lot that folks are dealing with. And so when we're thinking about well-being, I find this graph to be very interesting, because if we look at both of these pie graphs, the question is, in your school, how big of a priority is the emotional and physical well-being of teachers? Well, if we look at the bottom pie chart, we see that from the school leader's perspective, 71% said that it's a high priority, if not the highest priority, taking care of their teachers, teacher well-being, staff well-being, the highest the highest priority. And then when we look at the teacher responses, we see that 24% reported that it's a priority, which one way to read this is that there is a disconnect between intention and experience. Exactly, Yasmin. Actions and words are very different. Exactly, right? So we might have an intention to support well-being, but then there's so many priorities and so many things that, to tend to, that, how does that happen, right? And so we want to be thinking about this disconnect between intention and experience and seeing how can we bridge that gap so that well-being actually is a felt experience and a felt reality within schools. So when we look at that graph, one thing that comes up for me when I think about from the leadership perspective is that so many things are the number one priority, right? So we have the number one priority is addressing learning loss, right? It's the number one priority to address systemic racism that we're now so much more aware of on a systemic level, global level. That's a huge priority. Becoming trauma informed, that's a huge priority, right? Social emotional learning, well-being, intervention, family engagement, all of it matters. It's all essential. And so when we're thinking about these competing number one priorities, whatever role that we're in, it might be helpful to think about how we can focus this. And so next slide, please. So when we're thinking about all the many priorities that we have in whatever role we're in, it might be helpful to consider, where do I have some level of control? Because there's so much that we can't control, right? But is there a place where I have some level of control, that's an area that I really care about, that I might even have a passion for, that I can focus there and actually make a difference in that one area? What could that focus be? And that'll be very personal for every person, but thinking about that can be helpful. For me, it's well-being. This is where, as a long-term educator, this is where I feel like I can make a difference, right? Supporting schools and teachers of cultivating well-being. So when we're thinking about cultivating well-being in schools, I'd like to offer a perspective, which is we can think about, having activities here or there, or, that might be supportive. Or what I'm proposing is that we think about our schools, our districts, our classrooms as these rich spaces of learning, of growing, of potential and possibility, like a garden that we can cultivate and nurture into thriving, right? And so how do we do that? Well, we plant seeds, right? So we want to be planting seeds of well-being. And then we want to be removing as much as possible any weeds that are possible to be removed. So one of the seeds, which we had a tiny little experience with, is the practice of gratitude. So cultivating a culture of gratitude in the classroom, in the school district, there's many ways to do that, but having the intention of cultivating gratitude with our students, with our colleagues, with our families. It could be very simple. There could be different activities of how to do that. But the idea here is that any seeds that we plant where we're expressing gratitude, cultivating gratitude, sharing gratitude, this is a research-based practice that is incredibly supportive of well-being on an emotional level, on a psychological level, on a relational level. There's lots of research around the practice of gratitude and all of the scientific benefits of practicing something as simple as gratitude, right? So we just have to be intentional about that and add that seed into our garden and water it. The next seed that we can plant in to cultivate conditions for well-being is coming from a strengths-based perspective. So we want to be able to be mindful about where are we coming from, and if we can come from a strengths-based perspective, we can do a whole lot for encouraging growth and responding to needs from the strengths that are present. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. Another seed is being really human with one another and humanizing spaces. Yes, Ed, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So humanizing spaces, right? Like really being, that's one of the things the pandemic has done, is that we got to be very vulnerable and human, and, you know, it kind of, this element of shared humanity came to the forefront very strongly. So just being human and humanizing spaces can really support well-being. And I'll share a practice for that. And then finally, relationship building. So we know that really relationships are at the core of all things. So, you know, there's a lot that we can't control in the world, but we absolutely can control the quality of the relationships we have with each other, with our students. And it's through our relationships where everything happens. And so healing, well-being, thriving, learning, growing, it all happens within and through relationships. So we want to be mindful about that and nurture those seeds. And then as much as possible, we want to pluck any weeds from the garden. And that could be different, you know, archaic policies or, you know, certain stressors that might not be necessary. We might be able to tweak something here or there. It's all going to be particular to each school site, each school district. But conceptually, this is the invitation. What are the seeds that we can plant to support well-being? We can talk about practical ways to do that. And then are there some weeds that we can take out? Okay, so moving on to the next example. So humanizing spaces. This is, when we look at this image, you know, we can look at this and say, wow, wouldn't this be nice if life was so clean and organized? And if I felt so organized and clean inside, outside all the time, that would be nice. It might happen from time to time. But the reality is that life and teaching and learning and leading a school and being a parent and all of these things is quite messy. And especially during the pandemic, things got really shuffled, and it's kind of more of a, you know, messy experience, right? And that's okay, because life is not always neat and tidy. It can get messy. And so the invitation here when we're thinking about humanizing spaces is to embrace imperfection. And there's a lot of benefits to imperfection. So some of the benefits include allowing us to connect to our own humanity, right? As we embrace our imperfections, we can be more authentic. And in our authenticity, we build stronger and deeper, richer relationships. Embracing imperfection as adults helps us model for children and students that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have flaws. It's okay to falter. We can always learn from our experiences and get better and move forward. Embracing imperfection definitely provides opportunities for reflection and improvement. So if something didn't go well, we can reflect and say, what happened there? And how could I have done that better? But it's coming from a place of, I'm doing the best that I can. I have a whole lot on my plate, but let me see how I could do this better next time, right? It inspires creative solutions and innovations. And it also just mirrors the nature of reality. So if we think about, you know, our natural world and, for example, the ocean, next slide, please. In the ocean, right, like we can have some calm waves and we can have some tumultuous waves. That's life, right? Sometimes things are easy and peaceful and calm and, you know, smooth. And then we just get hit with a wave of some curveball in life. We can't control the way that life unfolds for us, just like we can't control the ocean and the waves, but we can learn to navigate the stressors and the waves of life with, mindfulness practices and a perspective of, like embracing imperfection. We're all doing the best that we can to navigate challenging times. Being gentle with ourselves and others can be very helpful. Mindful self-compassion as a research-based practice really is supportive in navigating stresses in life. And so moving on to the next slide, the next seed as far as cultivating this garden of well-being and conditions for well-being at any level within the classroom, school, district, is to operate from a strengths-based perspective. And I'm sure many of you already do this. So this might just be a reminder, but sometimes we can easily fall into what's not happening, what didn't happen, what's missing. And sometimes if we lose sight of the strengths that are present, we lose opportunities to actually build on a strong foundation that can help us meet the needs from a place of strength versus a place of deficit. So it's a perspective shift. So we'll watch the video and then.
That if we ask people to look for their deficits, they will usually find them, and their view of the situation will be colored by this. If we ask people to look for their successes, they will usually find it, and their view of the situation will be colored by this. In many ways, our traditional model of care embraces the belief that people need help because they actually have a problem. This emphasis on deficits, or what a person is lacking, leads to a cycle of focusing only on what needs need to be repaired, followed by some assumed solutions. It's a deficit approach that says, I need to fix you. When we do that, though, we actually deny people the opportunity to face the challenge and actually learn from it and discover things about themselves that they're going to need in order to resolve that situation in a way that actually looks like success for them. More recently, care providers and organizations have embraced this new strengths perspective and what it means to work with people and promote positive change. Rather than that more traditional model of fixing, it's more about actually focusing on people and understanding what strengths they bring to the picture, what capacities that we can draw upon that actually they will use in ways to transform their own lives in positive ways. It's important to understand that a strength-based perspective is not about denying challenges, but it actually sees challenges as an opportunity to grow. When problems become the starting point of change, then we tend to label people. There's a dependency that occurs, and it's always about drawing upon others in order to resolve their issues. But when we look at strengths, when we look at those things that people bring to the picture, they are then able to embrace it in ways that they understand. In many ways, this shift to a strength-based perspective changes the way we work with people. It's about working with people and facilitating rather than trying to fix their issues. It's about looking for signs of health rather than signs of risk. And it's about moving away from labels which limit people's options. It invites asking very different questions that are more curious, exploratory, and hopeful. The strengths approach, as a philosophy of practicing, draws one away from an emphasis on procedures, techniques, knowledge as the keys to change. It's not expert-driven. It reminds us that every person, family group, community are the keys to their own transformation and meaningful change. The real challenge, and always has been, whether we are willing to fully embrace a different way of approaching people and working with them. If we do, then the change starts with us in the helping profession, not with those we serve. Embracing a strength-based approach involves a different way of thinking about people, interpreting their patterns of coping with life challenges. With a strength-based mindset, one asks different questions and communicates in a way that invites a curious exploration based upon a clear set of values and attitudes. It's about exploring what can be as opposed to why not.
Okay, so let's take a few minutes now to think about you and to think about what strengths did you have to rely on in navigating the pandemic and continue to navigate these times. So let's take 30 seconds to think about yourself and, be very, bold and celebratory, please, of strengths that you have had to rely on. So let's see what we have in the chat. My resourcefulness. Yes, Yasmin. What else? I know in my world, I had to rely on flexibility, things shifting, understanding how to use technology, patience, patience, patience. Yes. Big strength, patience, right? It's not easy always. How to modify and adapt. Absolutely. Things were shifting and changing and continue to. How do we shift and modify, adapt, acclimate? Yeah. What else do we have? And then maybe even thinking about your students or families or staff that you work with as well. What were some strengths that you saw in them? Being open, yes. Being willing to learn, to collaborate, right? Resilience, absolutely. And so there's innovation. We had to rely on one another. We had to problem solve together. We had to work together, right? There was a lot that, we had to kind of be okay with things not being totally perfect. We just had to kind of adapt as we went along, right? Next slide, please. So thinking about strengths, we can see them within ourselves. We can see them in each other. And so there's a very powerful practice that I do with educators, and it is really profound. It's very beautiful. It's very simple. It's coming from a strengths-based perspective, and it's a relational well-being practice. So this is about building relationships. It can be done very simply at a staff meeting. It could be done with students. It doesn't take a lot of time. It could be, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, 6 minutes, just to create some connections. And this is about reflecting strengths in one another. So the way it works is that we get into small groups. It could be groups of 3, maybe groups of 4. And what we're doing is each person's going to get a chance to be in the awesome chair. This is the receiving chair. And what we do is that we mirror their strengths, so we can give them compliments. So one person is in the awesome chair. There's a timekeeper, so we have a limited time per person, depending on how much time you have. 2 minutes. I wouldn't go more than 3 minutes per person because it's a lot, but 2 or 3 minutes. Someone's keeping time, and then one person's in the awesome chair as the receiver. Now, all of us who are in education are excellent givers, very good givers. We give so much. Sometimes it's, we have to practice receiving. And so it really is a little bit, it can be a little awkward at first, but it gets easier and easier the more that we integrate this practice. So the receivers receive reflections from their colleagues or their peers. And we're just sharing appreciation, maybe a quality that we appreciate about the person, or, they helped us with something. We want to say thank you for that. Maybe we just have compliments or well wishes. So for the full time, the givers just shower their colleagues with appreciation and reflecting their strengths and gratitude and appreciation for them. And then when the time's up, then it's the next person's turn to receive. And it's a beautiful practice. Again, it's very simple, but what ends up happening is that the relational well-being between the adults really is supportive of well-being on that level. And then that supports us to be able to support the children. And so when we're thinking about whole child, we definitely, again, have to think about whole teacher, whole leader, whole human, right? And we think about it from an ecological perspective. All of this matters in supporting growth, learning, and thriving for everybody. And so next slide, please. And so that's my, invitation, is to be thinking about your role as a gardener, whether you're a school leader, whether you're, superintendent, or a classroom teacher, a counselor, a parent, right? If we think of ourselves as gardeners and the space that we're in as our garden, then, and that the seeds of possibility as the children and the staff that we work with, we want to be tending to the garden. What are some seeds we can plant? We went over gratitude coming from a strength-based perspective, humanizing spaces and relationship building. All of these are research-based practices. And there's a lot of concrete, practical ways that we can do that. But I want to conceptually just offer this as a way to move into this conversation around creating conditions for well-being, not just isolated activities here and there, not just on, Teacher Appreciation Week, showering our teachers with love that week. That's amazing. How do we do it so that we're building the condition, an actual climate, exactly, Yasmin, that it's in the environment, we're breathing it, we're living it, we're feeling it, so that chart, when we say we care about well-being, we can close that gap so it's a felt experience. And so there's lots of ways to do it. So if there's any weeds we can pluck, let's pluck those out, and then we just keep watering seeds and creating a thriving well-being environment for all. So I want to, as I wrap up my section here, you can go to my website if you'd like, wellbeingpd.com. So I support and I offer support for schools and districts around well-being for educators through a professional development series and ongoing support. So it's social emotional well-being for the adults. And there's also, a place if you want to sign up for the newsletter. What you get there is weekly well-being practices, research-based skills, articles, videos every week that come out to support inspiring ideas for well-being, for themselves and for others. So that's, available for you. I'm happy to support anybody that would like additional support. You can find my contact information there. And I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you today. I hope it was valuable for you. And I know we'll have a chance for questions and answers at the end.
Without a doubt. So please be putting questions in the chat box because we're going to be answering them. Who doesn't want to be in the awesome chair? I think all of us would love to be in that awesome chair from time to time. And I love what you said about climate and then also identifying the weeds, because we all know one weed can take out an entire garden. And so those are things that are huge opportunities. So please put questions in the box. We're going to share with you some of the American Heart Association's resources that you all are getting through the Kids Heart Challenge and the American Heart Challenge program. Just like Dr. McMullen started with a calming video, the American Heart Association has created resources not only for your coordinators who are implementing our programs, but all of your teachers in the school. And so we're going to give you a little bit of a video and show you some of the calming walls that are available to you as well. You can see, just like we started at the video, just those small moments make a big difference. I'm sure all of you are running into from another meeting or running in from talking to a student or teacher, and how just those few seconds of taking a deep breath in and taking a deep breath out can make a significant difference in your overall well-being and your students as well. And so we have 6 calming wall videos along with meditation and mindfulness videos that your schools can utilize, whether it be during a particular class or just to calm down the students before the test. One of the other pieces that we've added to our curriculum as well is our social and emotional learning lesson plans. These are curriculum based in which have outlines of how to implement the program, focusing on, can you hear me? Speaking up and standing up for yourself, not me, but we, and then how to really have a productive disagreement conversation and many more activities. Another piece that we've added to our curriculum over the last few weeks as well is thinking about the posters that you can add as visuals of the difference that the heart and the mind can make in your overall well-being for your students. And so thinking about sleeping, drinking water, and just giving them the visuals that will make a big impact of what you're already saying in your schools, but bringing it to life of what a difference it makes in your heart. We also have some amazing posters that you can print and your teachers can print that talk about affirmation, being kind, different ways to communicate, showing respect and well-being. Once again, really encompassing the social emotional well-being of the whole child. And they are available not only in English, but Spanish, and can be printed off quite easily at your schools and distributed to all of your teachers. And then get up and moving. The next 2 pieces that we're going to show you are energizers. We know that from time to time, you can see that your teachers and also your students may be a little overwhelmed and need that moment to get out all of their fidgetness and be able to release that. And so the next 2 resources that we have, Get Up and Move. And then on the other half, we have a great partnership with the NFL, and we have some energizers. And so this is the Super Bowl championship. So if your team is a Cowboys are another team. Don't be offended. There's a video for you. But they're 2-minute energizers. And so if you need to get the kids blood pumping and moving, you can show these quick little videos to get them up out of their seats. They can do it right in front of their desk and then sit back and be focused. And so a lot of these great resources are available to you for your students, or if you want to use them as a principal or superintendent at a meeting just to get your faculty up and moving. And then the last two pieces as well are just pieces of information that we've created for a year-round newsletter. If you're providing them information that's focused on their well-being. So thinking about gratitude, thinking about their health, the proper amount of sleep that they need every day so they can wake up and be charged to take on any challenge. And these also is available either by month or without the months, and then English and Spanish as well. And they're downloadable, so you can electronically share them with your staff, and then you can use it with your families as well if you're looking for recipes a month that are healthy, or just different ways for the family to really make an impact around stress and gratitude. And then last, we have some fun morning announcements. If you're looking for just a way to energize your school, they start off with about 30 seconds of music to get the kids up and pumping. It talks about that social emotional well-being, taking a deep breath, doing good for others, and all of these are available as well with heart facts. And so lots of resources for you that you have accessibility to. At the end of this call, we will record this call and send it out to you along with the PowerPoint if you want to grab any of the slides or grab any of the resources, along with a link to the resources that you can share not only with your students, but also your faculty and the families if you're looking for a little bit of extra pieces. And so as we were talking, we had some questions come in the chat. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Mullins to come back on with me to answer some of these questions, and then put some questions in the chat as well as we continue to have a great dialogue together. You know, one of the questions that came up is, I want to do this, but where do I start? So what would be the first thing you would recommend for if there's a principal that wants to do this, or a teacher or a superintendent? Where do you start?
I would start with gratitude. You know, it's free, doesn't cost anything in the budget. Gratitude. I would start with gratitude. You know, even just starting a staff meeting with sincere gratitude that's specific, that's heartfelt, that's, you know, acknowledging the hard work of everyone involved. And also, one of the principals that I have a connection with, that we talk a lot, she in her school, what she does is they'll choose 2 teachers in a rotating basis, 2 teachers, 2 staff members to highlight at a staff meeting. You know, just taking a few moments to bring, one person at a time, of acknowledging something that they're doing, or just who they are and how they contribute. And so it's like an honoring of the human beings doing this incredible hard work. That's as simple as it can be to begin to integrate gratitude, appreciation, acknowledgement that's heartfelt in acknowledging the hardworking, educators. So that's a very simple something that can be done. Also, before starting a staff meeting, just inviting the faculty to take 2 minutes to turn to the person next to you and just share, 3 or 5 things you're grateful for today or this week. And what that does is it shifts our mind and our entire system out of all the stress that we're holding into acknowledging that there are many things that are also wonderful. And so holding both of those realities of, okay, there's some stresses I'm dealing with, and how do I also highlight things that I appreciate that make life wonderful, or that was really loving and kind or wonderful that this happened today. So it shifts our focus and it supports our well-being. These are just a couple of simple things. There's shout outs that can be done. There's gratitude jars. The whole lot of ways that we can integrate it. I just want to mention that the UC Berkeley Greater Good Science Center has a website. If you type in UC Berkeley Greater Good Science Center, you'll see a website there with tons of resources, all of it research-based around practices that you can integrate into, the school environment, into staff meetings. And so I just gave you a couple, but there's a whole lot more that we can explore.
I love that. You and I have been talking over the last few weeks, and one of the things that really stuck out to me, which I love, because sometimes when you go into these trainings, you're like, I want to do all of it. But
Yeah.
one of the things I love that you said is that one human being doesn't need to take it all on. And so
Yes.
get teachers to take different pieces of it. Would you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because that was one of the things that really stuck out to me.
Oh, absolutely. So absolutely. So I think what's really important to think about is we want to, shift our focus from little activities into institutionalizing well-being, like having it be part of the entire environment. And so how do we do that? Well, one way to do that, and one way that I've seen, that I'm a part of, supporting schools and doing this, is dedicating at least, and I'll get back to your question, Paisley, at least one PD a month, for example, structurally. If it's possible to do that, if it's possible to dedicate one PD a month or half of a PD a month, but that it's some structural, carved out, dedicated, protected time for well-being, then we're institutionalizing it. We're creating the conditions for that to happen. So what do we do in that half an hour or that hour, a month? Well, lots of things can happen there. And so what Paisley is talking about is the invitation to think about a well-being committee, a wellness committee that for, whoever was interested in this, and there's many of us that are. When I was in the classroom, if I had an opportunity to be a part of a wellness committee and to plan things for our well-being PD once a month, it would have made the biggest difference, because I would have felt like I'm doing something to support me and my colleagues. And also there's, self-efficacy, like I'm actually doing something that can make a difference for all of us. So people are passionate. There's some people that are very passionate about mindfulness and social emotional learning and well-being. Those are the champions that, if there's an opportunity to be a part of a committee to lead the way, but then we need the space for them to plan for that PD to be, once a month, ideally. I work with a school that does that once a month. It's all about well-being, and then we, it just makes such a big difference for them to have that dedicated time, just that one time, and it's very cost effective to be able to create that.
I love that, because the examples that you give aren't very expensive. How much is an awesome chair?
Right.
And to think of the 10 times that they can take these same activities and do them in their classrooms. And so if they feel good, their students will feel good. And so it's really kind of exciting to see those pieces come to light. So if you leaving, because we'll have one more question, because I know our time is almost up. What is the one thing they should leave this call and they should do next?
That's a good question. So leaving the call, I would hope that it's from a mindset of thinking about it as an ecology, and that we're planting seeds and we're watering seeds. So then that's like the perspective. That's how we're thinking about it. So then the next step is, what's one seed that I could plant this week? What's one tiny little seed that I can do? And maybe it's that starting a staff meeting with turn to your partner and share, 3 things you're grateful for. That would be enough. And then we just build and water that, and then plant some more seeds, and then just grow that environment.
That's amazing. Well, I will say I'm going to end this call saying I am absolutely grateful for all of you attending. I'm incredibly inspired by you presenting to us and giving us all these amazing ideas. We will have this call recorded. We will share all the resources that you spoke about and that you have accessibility with the American Heart Association. And so look for the email tomorrow, and then also be on the lookout for, starting in February, so we're going to take January off, our next professional development series. And so thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we hope you've learned one thing to take away from this call, and have a great, fantastic evening. Bye, everybody.